Brooke, congratulations.
Thank you.
What an honor. How does it feel?
It's a little surreal. We're here sitting at the headquarters of the United States Department of Agriculture, Abraham Lincoln's, department, the department that is, I believe, the department that serves all Americans, but especially, as you know, our farmers and ranchers in our ag community. And for a small town girl from Glen Rose, Texas, this is the American dream. That's how I feel about it, and to be able to effectuate President Trump's vision at this point in our country's history, but to do it from this perch is the blessing of a lifetime.
Let's talk about your vision. You've had several months to really kind of wrap your head around the next 4 years. So let's talk short-term goals and long-term goals.
It has been an amazing few months. I mean, I know you and I have spoken. I was in the last White House. I've spent so much of my career focusing on policy that lifts people to the American dream. A lot of that through all these years has been within the ag rural community, but this is the first time really since I started in Rick Perry's office 20-something years ago that I have zoomed in so completely into one issue set. And for me, it's so joyful, and it's hard, and it's complicated. And there's no simple answer. There just isn't. It's just whether it's trade or avian bird flu or tariffs, whatever it is, these are complicated issue sets that have real life impact on our ag community. And they're struggling and have been struggling perhaps more than they have in a century. So how do we change that? How do we fix it? How do we come together as a country and make it better for those that feed the world? And that's our ag community. So I spent a lot of time focusing on really some of the short-term, I'll call more urgent issues, which has been, I won't say overwhelming, but it's been eye-opening for me to really dig in and hopefully to make a difference. But then the long term, I just couldn't be more excited about focusing on rural prosperity, on bringing prosperity back to the rural communities, the kind that I grew up in, you and I'm sure most of your viewers grew up in, that we have seen hollowed out perhaps in the last number of years. The average age of our farmers is 58. How do we inspire a whole new generation of kids that want to stay in their communities, maybe move to a smaller community and become part of agriculture? So that for me is kind of a long-term issue that we're going to be focusing on too.
I understand that in your first few hours in your official capacity, you had a meeting about high-path avian influenza. It is impacting everyone.
Yes,
how do we combat that?
Well, I am, first of all, I was, just yesterday, I'm less than 24 hours sworn in here with you this morning. Yesterday, we did pictures, we did kind of the ceremonial. I got sworn in by Justice Thomas, talked to the President Trump, and then immediately I said I need to get the experts in here on the avian flu. And we had a great meeting right where we're sitting at the conference table. There's a lot we know, but there's a lot that we still need to think through and ensure that as we're briefing the White House, as President Trump is making his decisions, that we have the best and most important information in front of him, in front of those of us here at USDA that are making the decision, that we understand there are different parts of the ag community that have different opinions on the path forward, but that the status quo is not sustainable. We've got to do something and do something quickly.
Right, I know a lot of people are asking, do you have to call 1 million birds when one's found sick? But that's what you're researching.
That's right. That's exactly right. And really looking at the last administration, their approach, there are probably some things that maybe we would have done different if we had been in charge over the last 4 years. But that is what I'm getting my arms around right now. My goal is to, in the next few days, begin to move out a plan that hopefully can solve this once and for all. And looking at other countries in the world that are currently or have in the past faced similar situations and what they did and what has worked. What are the best practices out there?
One of your biggest challenges coming into this job is you've got to cut a budget. We got word from GAO too that things happened in the last administration that have to be corrected.
That's right.
And so what it boils down to a lot of people are going to fight over the SNAP benefits. Yeah. I know I just put a lot in one question, but how do you go into the next 4 years knowing you've got to cut so much from that budget?
The bottom line for me is that we have a mandate from the American people, and we have a president who was elected not just with 312 electoral votes, but with the popular vote, which a lot of people didn't think, because the Electoral College, would ever happen again for a conservative, and he won by pretty large numbers. And even those who didn't maybe vote for him, when you poll the issue, is the government too big? Is the government serving the people? Almost every American believes that our government is too big and that we are losing our way as a constitutional Founding Fathers vision of self-governance. And so across the board, not just here at USDA, but in every agency, we've all been tasked by President Trump to figure out a way to streamline, to make more efficient, but at the same time to make better. And I think sometimes that's lost in the narrative, perhaps more the left-leaning media. This is not about taking food out of hungry children's mouths. It's never about that. It's about figuring out whether the administration, the administrative state, the bureaucracy, is appropriately and intentionally achieving its mission. And whether that's USDA or Department of Defense or Department of Health or Education, whatever it is, we all have to do a better job. And so I am actually excited. It won't be easy, but I think there is a lot we're going to be able to find that we can return those dollars to the taxpayer figuratively, but in so doing make these programs much more effective and stronger, with SNAP being at the top of the list.
You have a reputation of sort of being the closer and being able to tackle those tough budget and policy issues. Think that may be one of the reasons President Trump chose you?
You know, it could be. It is the honor and blessing of a lifetime when he and I spoke about this particular position. I think that was part of it. I think part of it, though, is his heart is with rural America and our farmers and our ranchers. Our people were the first to really line up behind him in 2015 and 2016. He got 90% of the vote, I think, from rural America. It's a remarkable story in a way that in recent history we don't see as much that support. And so I think for him too, it wasn't just, I think, that he realizes and has said, I'm an effective operator and hopefully can do good things as a manager of a pretty massive organization, but also that I will always have the best interests of our ag community in mind and in my heart. And I think for him that was a really important piece of this too.
You were only the second female to hold this office. Talk about that, what that means to you and women in agriculture in general.
You know, it's funny, I go all the way back to 1994 when I was running for student body president at A&M. I don't bring this up in interviews, but when you asked that, it just occurred to me. And if I were to win, which I did, I was going to be the first woman student body president at Texas A&M. And for an all-male, all-military school until the 70s, that was, you know, people talked about that quite a bit. And I remember thinking then, I never want anyone to vote for me because of which bathroom I used. And there are only 2 bathrooms, but they're only the bathroom I use, right? I want to win always on the merit and that I'm the best person for the job. And that hasn't changed in all these years, but it has been a really incredible gift to be sometimes put in these positions where you're the first or the second, because it's a platform that we don't always have. And for me, it's about inspiring young men, young women too, and that anything is achievable and anything is possible. And don't ever categorize yourself through identity politics. It's always who's the best. But in so doing, as a woman, I am so proud. All the teams that I've led, I think my teammates would say that it's always led with a servant's heart, always led with serving each other. I am never, ever the head of any organization. I'm only there to serve the people on the team and the people in the mission. And I've always believed that. And I think perhaps that brings a little bit of a different approach in a way that sometimes women leaders have, that we're family. And the people that are on my team are part of my family forever. And no matter which of those teams it looks like. So I'm excited about that. I'm always excited if there's a new opportunity to reach new audiences, to maybe inspire the next Brooke Leslie, raised by a single mom in a tiny little town without any resources, who's going to college on an ag scholarship, that maybe that little girl could dream bigger than she ever thought was possible.
You grew up, like you say, in small town Texas, and you were very involved in FFA. Talk about that, why you chose to do that, and what it did for you.
Anyone that has followed my story has heard me say that if asked, what do you attribute these amazing achievements, whatever you want to call them to, and I always say first God, second my single mom, and third the future farmers of America. And there are a lot of different pieces of that. I mean, FFA took me to Texas A&M, took me to my ag background. I mean, I grew up on a small little farm in Glen Rose, but raising animals, et cetera. But FFA is where I really learned about service to a greater cause, about family that isn't necessarily the same blood as you. My state officer team, 1990-91, all 10, so they're 9 plus me, so 10 of us, all 9 of them were here for my hearing 2 weeks ago. We're all still, they are my family, they are my brothers and sisters, and we have all grown up together. That organization, the intention of raising the next generation of leaders, not just in agriculture, but across the board, I believe continues to be one of the most important things in our country today. I will always be FFA's #1 cheerleader, fan, and hopefully in this next iteration, and 4-H also as well, but FFA week is coming up, and I was a state officer for FFA, but they're world changers. That organization is a group of world changers, and finding kids like myself that really didn't realize how big a world it was and how much we could achieve, and frankly, how much we can help other people. That's what I learned through FFA.